Hello, and welcome to the New Jersey State Council on the Arts webinar on grant programs and funding opportunities for fiscal year 20. I'm Tammy Herman, Director of Programs and Services, and I'm pleased to provide you with an overview of the Council's grant programs. Although you could not submit questions during this webinar, the Council's program officers are available to help you with questions at any time. Program officers in each discipline are reachable by telephone and email, or you may schedule an appointment for in-depth application form assistance. Contact information for staff will be available at the conclusion of this webinar. Before we dive into the Council's grant programs, I'd like to take a few moments to provide you with a brief history of the Council and its role as the state's largest arts funder. The Council was created in 1966 as a division of the New Jersey Department of State and consists of 17 governor-appointed members. The Council's volunteer members are supported by a professional staff who carry out the Council's programs and services from the state capitol in Trenton. Our staff is well positioned to meet with grantees and potential applicants to provide support in an effort to help organizations, artists, and the arts community as a whole stay healthy and vibrant. For over 50 years, the Council has keenly understood the value of arts, creativity, and innovation in New Jersey. It is the passionate work of the Council to help maintain New Jersey's unique identity by investing in the organizations and artists that keep our diverse state thriving. We achieve this mission through a wide array of programs and services. Please visit our website, artscouncil.nj.gov, often and subscribe to our bi-monthly newsletter, Opportunities for the Field, to keep well informed of those opportunities. As the largest funder of the arts in New Jersey, the Council is committed to providing both annual and multi-year grants to New Jersey's nonprofit organizations and artists. Strategic, responsive, and responsible grant-making is the Council's highest priority, and the Council's initiatives have earned national recognition for excellence, innovation, and responsiveness to community needs. Thanks to the Council's dedicated revenue source, New Jersey's hotel-motel occupancy fee, and an annual investment through a competitive grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Council is poised to offer more than $15 million in grants for fiscal year 20. However, this figure is subject to change based on final appropriations from the state and the grant award from the NEA. Chief among the Council's grants, programs, and services, and the focus of this webinar, is our organizational grant program. Through this grant program, the Council seeks to support nonprofit organizations that fulfill our intersecting missions of service to the people of New Jersey through the arts. The organizational grants available for fiscal year 20 are General Operating Support, also known as GOS, General Program Support, also known as GPS, and Arts Project Support, or, as you guessed it, also known as APS. The grant programs for these grants run July 1st to June 30th. Please visit the Council's website at artscouncil.nj.gov to read the guidelines for each grant category to determine the grant that is right for your organization. Applicants should also consult the Frequently Asked Questions document, which is posted on our website for additional guidance and support. To further help you in that decision-making process, I'll be covering the 5 following topics over the course of the webinar: overview of the Council's organizational grant program, what are GOS, GPS, and APS grants, New Jersey State Council on the Arts grant-making process, general eligibility for the Council's grant categories, application elements, and finally, grant writing tips. Now that the overview is finished, let's get started. The Council is very proud of its organizational grant program. We view the funding through this program as an important investment in New Jersey's nonprofit organizations. The Council is committed to helping you bring the very best your organization has to offer to as many New Jerseyans as possible and to build your capacity to sustain these achievements in the future. General Operating Support, or GOS grants, provide support for the overall operations of organizations whose missions are exclusively devoted to the arts. GOS grants are typically awarded with a 3-year commitment and are to be matched 3-to-1, meaning organizations must earn or raise and spend $3 for every dollar received from the Council. The second grant opportunity in the Council's organizational grant program is General Program Support, or GPS. These grants provide support for the operating costs of full-time, ongoing public arts programs. GPS grants are typically awarded with a 3-year commitment and are to be matched 3-to-1, meaning organizations must earn or raise and spend $3 for every dollar received from the Council. Review and consideration of both GOS and GPS requests occur every 3 years. After this cycle, the next opportunity the Council will be accepting applications in this category will be in fiscal year 23. While this grant category supports the overall operations of the organization or program, Council funds cannot be used for the following expenditures: capital improvements and acquisitions, hospitality costs, even though we know food makes everything better, deficits or replacements of funds normally budgeted for the activity, fundraising events, and finally, student publications or scholarship funds. The last grant opportunity in the Council's organizational grant program is Arts Project Support, or APS. APS provides support for an arts-based project. For the Council, a project is defined as a public activity or event that occurs once during the year, either as a single day or weekend presentation, or a series of the same presentation occurring within a very limited and specific time frame, which is 12 weeks or less. This year, priority will be given to arts-based projects that provide opportunities to engage new voices, reach new communities, or encourage innovation in the field. This grant is to be matched 1-to-1, meaning organizations must earn or raise and spend $1 per dollar received from the Council. This grant opportunity does not support ongoing or multiple programs or the general operations of an organization. The project must be wholly dedicated to the arts, and the applicant should clearly demonstrate its commitment to the project within the application. Unlike our GOS and GPS grant programs, review and consideration for APS requests occur every year. The next time the Council will be accepting applications in this category will be for fiscal year 21. It is important to note that current GOS and GPS grantees cannot apply for APS except in the category of folk arts. If you are unclear about the distinction between GOS, GPS, and APS grants, or need special guidance in folk arts, please contact Council staff. We are available to answer any question you may have. It is our job to help you put forward the best application possible to the panel. The Council's grant application process is pretty straightforward. All parts of the grants process are driven by the SAGE system. SAGE stands for the System for Administering Grants Electronically. It is the state of New Jersey's grant management system. All applications are submitted and reviewed in SAGE. In fact, successful applicants will manage their contract and file both the interim and final reports in SAGE. You can access the SAGE website at njsage.intelligrants.com. If you need assistance with SAGE at any time during the grants process, please reach out to staff for that help. Again, our contact information will be available to you at the conclusion of this webinar. The Notice of Intent to Apply, also known as the NOI, was the first required step in the application process. Organizations could not submit a GOS, GPS, or APS application unless they submitted an NOI in December. There is an exception to that requirement. Current GOS and GPS grantees did not need to submit an NOI unless it was noted as a requirement in the organization's fiscal year 19 contract specifications. Each organization that submitted an NOI was required to speak with program staff to discuss their organization, program, or project. The purpose of the NOI in the meeting was to establish a good line of communication with potential grantees, confirm eligibility, and screen for potential issues before a full application is submitted. If an organization successfully meets all the Council's eligibility requirements, they received a SAGE email notification announcing the availability of the application. That application must be e-filed in SAGE by Wednesday, February 13th, 2019 by 11:59 p.m. Please don't wait until the last day to submit your application. Staff is generally available until 4:30 each day, and no one will be in the office to help you after those office hours. Remember, requests for extensions to the deadline will not be permitted. Once the deadline has passed and you've successfully submitted your application, program staff prepares for the busy peer panel deliberation and review process. The first step in that process is your application. Applications are thoroughly reviewed for eligibility, and all links and uploads are checked to make sure they function properly. If there are problems with your support materials, your program officer will identify them in the application review checklist, and you will have the chance to correct them. Also during this time, staff are interviewing and vetting panelists for the rigorous peer review panels scheduled for April and May. Grant applications are read, discussed, and evaluated by peer review panels made up of independent experts in each of the different categories and disciplines of the applicant pool. The panels convene in Trenton to evaluate the applications in strict accordance to the criteria as published in the guidelines. Once all applications are evaluated by all the panels, the consensus comments and rankings are forwarded to the Council's Grants Committee for deliberation and forming recommendations to the full Council. The committee makes those recommendations based on a set of adopted funding principles and on the complete review of panel comments, ranks, and any funding history. The Council holds its annual meeting, typically the fourth Tuesday in July, to vote on and award grants. Following the annual meeting, all applicants will receive a decision letter that includes the grant amount, if awarded, and consensus comments. Successful applicants can expect to receive notification that their contracts are available in SAGE early in the fall. Each of the 3 grant opportunities in the Council's organizational grant program have specific eligibility and project requirements. It is important that you read them carefully to make sure your organization meets them in their entirety. However, there are general eligibility requirements to keep in mind that are applicable for GOS, GPS, and APS. To be eligible to receive a Council grant, an applicant must be incorporated in the state of New Jersey as a nonprofit corporation or be a unit of government, college, or university. Tax exempt by determination of the Internal Revenue Service in accordance with Sections 501c3 or C4, registered annually with the New Jersey Charities Registration Bureau and Division of Revenue, and in compliance with all pertinent state and federal regulations. In addition, the applicant must demonstrate that it has an artistic mission and focus for the organization or project seeking support, a board of directors responsible for the governance and administration of the organization, its programs, and finances, been in existence and providing public programs or services for at least 2 years prior to the application, 1 half-time administrative staff person on payroll at minimum, and lastly, current, regional, or statewide public impact through the organization's programs or projects. Regional impact is defined as serving audiences across a 3 or more county region of New Jersey. Since the Council does not fund degree-granting programs, we do not include students or faculty in the counts when asking about community impact. For example, a university art gallery or museum would need to demonstrate that their programs impact people other than their own students and staff, with 30% or more coming from outside the county and at least 2 additional counties. If less than 30% of the audience currently served is from outside the county, the organization is classified as having local impact. Those organizations that have local impact or cannot meet all the Council's eligibility requirements are encouraged to apply for Council support through the respective county arts agency. The Council provides significant funds to every county in the state for distribution through the local arts program. If you would like more information regarding this opportunity, please contact our staff. In addition, organizations are encouraged to critically examine their capacity in order to successfully manage a Council grant. Please pay attention to that section in the guidelines to ascertain if your organization is prepared and able to meet those requirements. Again, Council staff is available to walk you through those reporting requirements in detail. As I indicated earlier, the Council is poised to award approximately $15 million in grant dollars for the fiscal year 20 grant cycle. While that figure sounds high, it actually represents level funding for over a decade. That means competition for Council funds will be at an all-time high. It is important that you read the guidelines carefully and thoroughly to help you put together the strongest application possible. The Council knows that not all worthy organizations will be funded, and that we must invest our limited dollars in the most effective way possible. Panels will be looking for those organizations that can carry out their proposed activities at the very highest levels. As they go through your application and those of your contemporaries, they will ask, which organizations are poised to be the most successful? Which ones are poised to be the most impactful? The strategies and projects that can accomplish this are as various as the organizations themselves. What successful proposals must have to be successful in obtaining a Council grant is the ability to produce results that are significant and sustainable. And that brings us to the application itself. The Council's application is made up of many components. We know it is a rigorous one, but we worked hard to make it relevant and meaningful. Our guidelines are the key to help you successfully fill out each form, chart, and narrative that make up the application. Please visit the Council's website at artscouncil.nj.gov to download your own copy so that you can have it on hand as you work in SAGE. You can access the SAGE website at njsage.intelligrants.com. The Council's GOS, GPS, and APS application begins with the Organizational Profile Information Review page. This form provides the Council with the essential information about your organization, including its status with state and federal requirements. For example, it is in this form that you will record your charity's registration and division of revenue numbers. If you are not in compliance with those filings at the time of the application deadline, your application may be disqualified from the panel review process. Please make sure all information is correct and up to date. Any errors can result in an unintended problem. For example, all SAGE emails and notifications are sent only to the organization's authorized official. Often, this is your executive director. If that person has left your organization and that email is no longer active, and the new executive director has not updated the organizational profile form, SAGE will continue to send notifications to the inactive email address. This is true even if your organization has multiple users registered in SAGE. As you work through each form, you must select the Save button before you leave the page. If you choose not to select Save or Save and Next, all your hard work will be erased. Yes, let me pause while that sinks in. If you do not select the Save button, all your hard work will be erased. The next two forms, Type of Support and Panel Category, are very straightforward. In the Type of Support form, you will select the grant category to which you are applying, meaning GOS, GPS, or APS. In the Panel Category form, you will identify one of the panel categories that best applies to your organization. Please consult the glossary, which is hyperlinked within the guidelines for the panel category definitions. For those applicants who will apply in either the Arts Basic to Education or Folk Arts category, please carefully read the special guidance document, also hyperlinked in the guidelines. It will provide you with the key terms that you need to present in your application. The two program officers who manage the Council's arts education portfolio and the folk arts portfolio are available to help you with the special guidance directives. The Application Details Summary form provides the essential information about the request for funding. It contains the purpose of funding, type of activity, arts education activities, and project descriptors. The purpose of funding statement is limited to 300 characters and should contain the basic who, what, where, and when information. We provided an example for you to follow in the guidelines. The remaining 3 fields provide the National Endowment for the Arts with important statistics about arts organizations across our state. Next in the application is the narrative. This section is the heart of your application, and you should spend considerable time creating and refining this portion of the proposal. For GOS and GPS applications, this statement is limited to approximately 8 pages or 32,800 characters. For APS applications, this statement is limited to approximately 5 pages or 20,300 characters. The narrative should clearly and concisely communicate your organization's story to the panel and provide solid and direct context for the other materials in your application. The narrative should directly address the Council's 6 evaluation criteria through those narrative topics. Please be aware that those narrative topics differ in the GOS, GPS, and APS guidelines. You should compose a narrative that will provide a panelist who does not know your organization the ability to fully understand it in direct relation to the Council's criteria. Panelists will look for evidence of solid program planning and implementation in accordance with those evaluation criteria. We recommend using the topics as headings. This will help the panelists follow your narrative. Your narrative should also specifically reference the charts and your uploaded and linked support materials. A strong application is one in which all of the components tell the same story. The next 10 forms are comprised of various different charts. Remember, use the Save or the Save and Next button before leaving that form. The board chart identifies who serves on the organization's current board. Colleges and universities should provide the advisory board for the program or project, not the college's board of trustees. Other project applicants that are overseen by an advisory board should also list that board after the institutional governing board. If you are a returning grantee, please check the form for accuracy. Guidance for this chart has changed since the last top of the cycle. Please make sure you've answered all the questions. The next form, the staff chart, identifies the organization's current staff, which must include, at a minimum, one half-time administrative employee. For GPS and APS, include staff dedicated to the program and prorate hour and wage information devoted to the program. The panel will expect to see that your organization is supported administratively by at least one paid employee working, at minimum, 15 to 20 hours a week. We know that many organizations have employees that wear many different hats. If, for example, your artistic director is also responsible for office management, please make that clear in your narrative under the Key Personnel section, and be sure those duties are reflected in that person's bio you've uploaded in the required support materials form. The next 4 charts provide the panelists with a detailed look at your organization's income and expense activities over a 3-year period. Please note that the charts ask for a cash accounting based on a fiscal year, not a calendar year. We know the charts contain broadly named categories. It allows an organization the flexibility to place and group together budget items where they make the most sense. However, make sure you detail what sources comprise those line items. Use the budget notes to describe or explain the information in your finance charts. The panel expects budget notes to provide additional information about your organization's complete financial picture. The panel will look at the relationship of the budget to the described activities. For example, the panel will look to see if the organization has the ability to raise and responsibly expend its financial resources in support of the organization or the arts activities. The panel will look to see if you have a solid, broad, and diversified source of support that does not show an over-reliance on any one funding source. If applicable, the panel will look to see if the organization's anticipated growth is well supported and documented throughout the application. For example, the panel may question the organization's assertion that it is poised to successfully institute a 20% budget increase if the organization's audits show that the budget has not increased more than 5% in the past few fiscal years and does not demonstrate either committed funding sources or a well-thought-out strategic plan. The remaining 4 charts provide you with the ability to document and itemize the in-kind goods and services your organization receives. While in-kind goods and services may not be counted toward the grant match, detailing in-kind contributions is helpful for panelists to understand those costs not detailed in the project expense charts. Contributions must be documented based on fair market value. For APS applicants only, the next form in the application speaks to the ADA project checklist. This checklist covers only basic accessibility issues and Americans with Disability Act requirements. For first-time GOS and GPS applicants, you must complete the Council's self-assessment survey and planning tool to establish a baseline by the end of the calendar year. That form is available at the Cultural Access Network's website, which is hyperlinked in the guidelines. Should you need assistance with filling out either of these forms, the Council's ADA coordinator's contact information will be available to you at the conclusion of this webinar. The next 3 forms allow you to upload required and optional support materials. The support materials are important tools that provide the panel with a complete picture of your organization's Applicants are required to submit specific support materials and have the option of submitting up to 5 additional pieces of support material from the past 18 months. Artistic quality demonstrated through support materials is very important. The links and/or uploaded files submitted should present samples of the organization's and associated artists' best work. Panelists will assume what you show are the best possible samples. Please take the time to provide the panel with the highest quality photographic and video production images possible. The maximum file size you can upload is 13 megabytes. There is no size restriction for linked work samples. Do not submit links to password-protected sites or pages, and make sure all links are working properly. Please be aware that support material requirements vary according to grant category and within each discipline as well. Detailed information is found in the support materials section of the guidelines to help you put together the best possible selection of materials. If you need help from program staff, support is a mere telephone call or email away. The last 2 forms finalize your application to the Council. The application certification form is the place where your organization's authorized officials electronically sign the application. Lastly, the submission instructions form provides you with a few helpful hints before you officially submit your application in Sage. I urge you to follow those helpful hints. They will give you peace of mind as you double-check your application for accuracy and completeness. Remember, you may not submit any materials after the application due date, which is Wednesday, February 13th at 11:59 p.m., has passed. The only exception to that rule is the audit requirement for GOS and GPS applicants only. If your organization has a calendar-based fiscal year and the audit or financial review is not completed by the application due date, but will be available by March 31st, you should substitute a memo noting this fact and then submit the fiscal year 18 report to the Council by March 31st. Failure to provide the audit may result in disqualification from the panel review process. Before we conclude this webinar, I'd like to leave you with a few grant writing tips. First and foremost, give yourself ample time to complete this application. There are a lot of components that make up a council application. Make sure you and your team take the necessary time to digest the guidelines and compile all the materials and documentation you need to fully complete those components. Craft the narrative using the narrative topics and the evaluation criteria. Be specific and be clear. Successful proposals provide full responses to each of the narrative topics. It is a good idea to write the narrative in a Word document and then cut and paste it into Sage. Help the panelists fully navigate your proposal. Label your support materials accurately. Use topic headers and avoid jargon and the overuse of acronyms. Cite specific support materials and/or budget line items within the narrative. And above all, make sure your narrative aligns and corroborates your charts and support materials. For example, if you cite in your narrative that you are engaging teaching artists, make sure those artistic fees are reflected in your budget. Be mindful that you are balancing ambition with practicality. Make sure you are not overinflating growth. For example, if you cite that you expect to raise $15,000 in individual gifts because you intend on securing a volunteer grant writer on your board, but do not have a working nominating committee, and your budget shows that you've never raised more than $1,000 in contributed revenue, the panel will question your ability to execute that plan at that level. Sound growth is always supported by well thought out actions and plans. Don't assume the panelists know your organization. It's always a good idea to have someone who is not affiliated with your organization go through the application. Chances are, if that person has a question, someone on the panel may have one too. Make sure you are communicating about your organization and the work you do in the community to the best of your ability. Give the panelists the information they need to fully understand your organization. For example, use the budget notes to fully explain your financial health. An organization with a deficit or carrying debt is not uncommon. Panelists are more concerned with the relationship of the deficit or debt to the overall budget and other assets, and whether the organization has a realistic, detailed plan for its reduction and eventual elimination. The relationship of the budget to the activities described is also important. Be true to your costs. We want you to detail the real costs of doing business. Make sure you detail line items that contain multiple sources. Our budget forms are not one size fits all, and budget notes explaining where certain budgetary items are calculated is important. Lastly, know that we want you to succeed. That's our role, to help you put together the best possible application. Contact us early and often, but help us help you. Read the guidelines and don't wait until the last few days before the deadline to ask your questions. And don't wait until the last day to submit your application in Sage. We know from past experience that Sage slows down the more traffic it experiences. If you are working late, staff isn't in the office to help you after regular office hours. We don't want you missing the deadline due to a technical glitch. And remember, extensions to the deadline will not be allowed. There are no exceptions. Do yourself a favor. Begin preparations early. Read the guidelines line by line. Ask questions often and submit early. You'll be glad you did. As promised, here's the contact information for our staff. We are looking forward to helping you through the application process.